So I'm just going to show you how to install a window. So I've got these bonded windows. These are single glaze, so they will condensate and they do lose heat. However, they're not very expensive and they're really big, so there's a nice effect. So it's a bit of a pro and con. And with this window, basically we need to cut a hole in the side of the van. This is going on the door, and we basically glue it on. And there's a little bit of a process with the glue and ways to kind of stop yourself screwing it up. But because you're cutting a hole in a van, you've got to get it right first time. Like, the idea of getting it wrong is just scary on a quite expensive van. And it's one of the few things you really need two people just to help you get it up and in place, in the right place, because you don't get many chances to stick it on. So that's going to go there, but first I've got to cut a hole. Often with these bonded windows, you can see there's a border on it. So I'm just gonna cut just to make a hole which is just the right size to go around the outside of this border. And when it goes on and we put the edging on the metal, it's gonna look great. Basically just a permanent marker, because that's what we can mark out. We're gonna cut all this stuff, so it doesn't matter if it gets a little bit marked up. And I'm just gonna measure in from the edge of this thing. So this is 14.5 mil. I'll transfer that straight to the door. 14.5 mil, 14.5 mil. And what I'll do is I'll mark out all of this, and then I'll take off the protective layer and I'll put the window on to make sure, because that's the end result. Because you just do not want to get it wrong. Basically 90 from the top. So this is a privacy tint window, and for some reason with this plastic on it we can see through it, but as soon as you take the plastic off you can't. I don't know what sort of voodoo physics involves with that, but same 14.5 to the edge of the black, and from the bottom, so that's 6.3. If you can see on the window there's a dark stripe. This is the bit you'll be able to see through in the dark stripe. And you've got to get these the right way up. And you can see this the right way up because there's like the little text about the window at the bottom. Now, with this one, it's probably worth measuring from the top line down, because this has got like a scoop and I don't necessarily exactly know where the window stops. So it's a little bit of effort to work out exactly where you want to do these windows. But like I was saying, the price of getting it wrong is pretty high. Okay, now I've got some dots. I'm just gonna draw some lines around and see if it matches up. I'm not gonna cut this corner. I'm gonna find like a pot, a yogurt pot or something about the same size, put it on, draw a line round, and we'll have it follow the same shape as the tint. So now I've marked out my basic square. I just want to make sure it actually works for the window. It's worth trying not to touch the black edge here where we're going to glue it. The less grease on there, the better. I'm just going to do my lines line up. Basically, if you see, I'm just going to slide it here to the side a tiny bit, and I can see my line. So there's the line. As I slide it back, it's going to be like bang on. And the same on the other side. You can just see the line behind it. And below, it's there. So I'm fairly confident now that basically if I put the window on in the right place, we're gonna be okay. This has pretty much got the same diameter as that circle on the outside of the window. So I can just basically draw this round. So as we can see, there is a strut in this window. We're probably going to end up cutting through here. So we just have to close this up carefully, not to deform the window. So because I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen here, I've never done it on this van before, I'm gonna pump a couple holes in, just from the outside, maybe a little bit in, just to be sure, and just to get an understanding of where this is gonna come out. Because to cut this side would be very difficult because of our corners. But what I don't want is to be trying to cut through this stuff. It will be a nightmare. It has to be on the flat. If it's not on the flat, we're going to have real problems kind of closing it up and putting the edging on. So I can see where these centers are, even if the drill bit's too blunt. And it will be pretty much exactly within this. So I think it's going to be fine. Now you're going back now. I'm just going to get a step because I want to be quite close to this, and ear defenders because it's super noisy. You do need some form of eye protection because you just have tiny, tiny filings of metal flying at your face, and to keep it tight and to be really accurate with your line, you've got to be close. It's also worth leaving the top bit till last, so that when you cut the top, it just drops, you push it in. The first bit's a little awkward because we've got a bit of a bend in it, but then I'm just gonna come in and just follow up the line and just take your time. There's no rush. It's good just to take a little break. So also let the blade stop moving if you're gonna stop it before you take off the pressure. Also be like boom, 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 and you can end up deforming or denting part of your van. So right now we're going through the strut. Let's give it some kickback to alleviate that, just more pressure. Bam! Looks all right, doesn't it? That's it. We've cut the window. Now there's a little job to close these bits up, sand it, clean it round, apply the edging, and then look at the adhesive stage. So I'm just taking a file. I'm just going to run around to there's all the sharp edges and just clean those off. Like if you don't have a file, you can just get a hard piece of wood and wrap tight some sandpaper on it, some quite rough sandpaper, and it will do the same job. You're not doing a huge amount here. Cool. So on this van, this is where the strut was, and it's really very light. I can just push with my fingers. So I don't actually know if we need to close it up. Sometimes you'll have a much stronger one, say on the Transits or different vans, where you cut your window, and what you do, you'll case a piece of wood and some mole grips. The wood goes on the outside to protect the shape, and you'll just squeeze them up with a pair of pliers or mole grips or whatever you have. But this isn't too bad. If I just file the outside a little bit, this will sit within the edging. So there's this like sort of steel and rubber edging. So it might not be too bad just because it's so light. So this is the edging you put on the window. See, it's got like a little sort of sealing mechanism, and it's probably got some sort of metal inside here in the rubber, which gives it its strong form. When you're applying the edging, I wouldn't have a join at the bottom of the window, because these windows, because they're single skin, will condensate and eventually it will drip down, especially if it's super cold. And if it drips down and it goes into a join, then it will capillary in and capillary along all your edge. Now, a lot of people will, and you can do it, you can seal up this edge. I'm not going to, because I don't think it's that necessary, especially if the way I put the edge in, the join is, you know, somewhere like here in the corner on this flat part. Flat part makes sense, basically. So, and it's really easy to put this in. In the corners, you just you can tap it in with the back of a hammer or something. As you can see, nothing to be afraid of with edging. The edging is your redeemer. If you did your line up a tiny bit by 1 millimeter or something, and if you did it by 10 mil, then you're doomed. So before you go on with the side too much, it's good to like really pat it into the corners, because sometimes it will arch a bit, and if you like go all the way around and then you cut the end, when it kind of beds into those corners, you're going to end up with a little gap, and yeah, that would be really annoying. So as we can see, we're coming up to this join, and I'll just get a pair of like wire cutters or something, just chomp it. I'll give it like a millimetre more, because it just pushes it in together. I found that this thing gets like hot, because it's right by that window, and it gets hot every time your van's in the sun all day. And I found that over the period of like 3 years, this will slightly shrink, and you end up with like a 5mm gap here. I mean, you can't really manage that, but if you just make sure it's as absolutely tight as possible, maybe you've got the best chance that it will be all right. See, it's got these little metal pieces inside which give it its form. Yeah, that's lifted up. It's in. You can see it, but it's basically good. Edging in, and now the window isn't like a health hazard for cutting yourself. So the next stage is bonding. I got this kit from tradevanwindows.co.uk, and in it, it's got basically everything you need, which is useful. So this is the kind of the glue, and it's like particularly viscous. It's hard stuff to work with. But first what you have to do, you have to clean the window and very carefully clean the outside of the van, because if there's any grease or whatever, then it might not bond. And considering you've got this window on the outside of your van and you're going to be driving at 100 miles an hour or whatever, it's important that it doesn't fall off. Basically, you wipe and clean down the kind of a tinted dark part of the window. You mustn't get it on the glass, because it will potentially damage the glass, or well, it says that in the instructions anyway. And this is basically to prepare it for the glue. And I'm going to go around this. It doesn't say it, but it doesn't seem to make sense not to. Now we're going to apply the primer. And I'm going to put it on both the window. So you got to apply this in a continuous band all the way around the window. You don't want any gaps. This is where you're going to put your glue on eventually. You do not want to get this on your window itself, because that'll be the end of your transparency. And then I'm going to do the same to the window. Careful not to drip it down your paintwork, because that'll be rubbish. It doesn't say you have to do this, but I just don't see why not. Now I'm going to apply the sealant, or the bonding sealant, and it's important to remember it's got to be really thick. You can't have like a thin layer, because it won't even touch the window, because remember we've got the edging, so the glue's got to make up for the width of the edging basically. So you think about that on that basis. It's quite thin. I say especially on the top, so transit's thinner at the top, here it's bigger at the top, which is probably better, because you can get more seal. And if you don't put enough on it, you think, oh, it's thin, you don't need as much, but you need a lot to make sure that thing seals. So yeah, really don't go light on it. It's also really viscous, so it takes ages to come out of the thing. If you squeeze it too hard, you just break these bloody things. Last thing you want is a leak in the top of your window. And that's that. Okay, so this is where you need help. We've just held this on now for about 5 minutes. Don't know, 8 minutes, just been chatting, so I'm not sure. But basically you can kind of tell, like, when it stops to like flex upwards, you know, like still a tiny bit of movement in it. So I'm just gonna kind of just be on the safe side and just hold it for a bit longer. And that's it. Window. Didn't take long. It's not hard. You can definitely do it. You just need a jigsaw, a drill to put your jigsaw in, and patience to measure it properly. Just don't get it wrong. Take your time with the jigsaw, take your time with stuff, put it on, and then just like get someone to help you put the window on, and then just hold it for long enough. So it takes a while for these to fully cure. So once you put your window on, I would just don't drive to the next day, and then you're good. I hope you enjoyed that video. We work really hard to make these videos, and we really appreciate that you helped us by supporting the content that we make. Don't forget that in the description there are a bunch of links for all the parts which we mentioned in this video, and check them out, and it will just make your life a little bit easier when you're searching for things to use for your van. Best of luck for the rest of your conversion. I can't wait to see you guys on the road.